Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Post Military Podcast, where we share stories of veterans' transition out of the military and their advice to other service members based on their life experience. Whether you are still in service, a veteran, or just someone preparing to transition into a new chapter of your life, there is something here for you to learn. I've included timestamps in the description of the episode, so head down there to see if there are any topics that are of particular interest to you. Also, while you're poking around, subscribing to the channel or podcast on your favorite platform is always greatly appreciated. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Post Military Podcast, the podcast where we give you stories and advice on transitioning out of the military and into the next chapter of your life. With me today is someone that I'm very excited to talk to. He works in an industry that is very foreign to most of us in the military and getting out of the military. So I'm very excited for him to shed some light on the industry that he works in. In addition to being a writer and working as a journalist down in Los Angeles, he is part of the Marine Reserve's Civil Affairs and also is a podcast host. He has his own personal podcast, the Samurai Pulse, and also has hosted a podcast for the Marine Corps, Hard Charging, and currently hosts another podcast for the Marine Corps, which is Human Dimension. So go check those out. Those will be linked down in the description below. But his name is Joel Searles. And Joel, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Billy. It's great to be here.
So let's start at the beginning. Tell everybody about how you entered active duty and what got you to the point where you were exiting active duty service.
The plan had always been to work in the entertainment field, even upon joining the Marine Corps. I initially was an actor in college, and I produced a playwright there at Ohio State. I was lucky to it was a Western social drama that I wrote, and the university really enjoyed it, and they granted me $7,000 to produce it, which is a lot of money for a kid in their early 20s, versus a college student. And that went up, and we sold out 6 out of 7 shows, and it did very well. I got to write like a master's level thesis on it. I had gunfights and bar fighting, some kind of John Ford Western stuff, but it also had a lot of social issues, alcoholism, domestic violence, racism, things that you see in the Midwest. It was definitely a social piece. So that was something I did before joining the service. Come from a big military family going back to World War II. And, felt the call to serve even when I was younger in the 90s as a kid, and, joined the easy branch, the Marine Corps. And I definitely got a real challenge there, and was able to, progress not only as an officer, as a person, but grow as a leader, most importantly. And, while on active service, I still watched a lot of film and still, was very much into the present and the future and even the history of the industry. I initially planned to get an MFA in acting once I got out. And I thought it's a business, so I better understand business before I go back into it, which is what I did. I got an MBA from top level school, UCLA, interned in the industry, different companies. I would intern for Bob Shea, who produced the Lord of the Rings films and the Nightmare on Elm Street films and a lot of other stuff. I mean, Bob's still around. He's pretty legit. I was a reader for him and found a couple of good scripts there. And one of them got pitched to him. So I was like, that's pretty good for being a new guy here, getting stuff into Bob. And, I interned at another company for Jimmy Miller, who's a comedian manager. And he was working with Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly then. He'd made a career for Jim Carrey. So I transitioned into some really serendipitous, but also interesting parts of the industry and got to learn while still doing classes at UCLA, which that was super intense, and learned a lot about life in the world and business. Still continued the reserves. I'd done about 7 years on active duty. I'd served in Afghanistan as a close battle coordinator, coordinating close airstrikes, and then also medical evacuation helicopters So that was very fulfilling, but also stressful and intense, and made some great friends from that experience. Lost some people I knew over there as well. And, had decided even while on active duty, it's time to go move on and do something else, and still want to keep the reserves going, which I do. And have been blessed to have that. And, graduated from school, went to work in a mailroom at one of the top level agency, was delivering mail and wine and scripts and stuff, captain in the Marines, got an MBA and starting out at the bottom, starting out at boot camp again. And learned a lot there. Was able to work and was blessed to work with probably the only remaining Marine talent agent in Hollywood. His name's Andrew, and very much an older brother mentor figure as well to me. And he treated me very well. And I learned a lot from him and the industry just in general. And I got to package a feature film while at the agency. This retired Navy SEAL, Jason Cabell, who still directs. He directed some episodes of SEAL Team last year. He still directs, and so I'd connected with him to a veterans network, and we got to know each other. And serendipitous enough, he had got financing for it, and he'd attached Nicolas Cage to the film, which that's pretty big deal if you can attach an Academy Award-winning actor. And took it in there to Andrew, and we talked about it. He enjoyed the script. We sent it out to some of the clients. I'm pretty sure it was 100% like rate from every client that we sent it to. And it was a drug thriller. It's not a touchy-feely film. It's a real true account of how the drug trade is and the falls and the evil that exists. So it's an R-rated feature, but it tells a true story. And if you watch it, you can pick up on that. And I got to be a security guard for a drug warehouse in the movie. So it's kind of neat getting to help produce something and put Lawrence Fishburne in it. And there's Clifton Collins and Peter Facinelli. And so put those folks in there, get it financed, and then get a chance to go to set and see it really happen. That was truly, that was a highlight of my career thus far. And that was a mission that I'd had going for years, was to produce and work with veterans. So to bring us to today and where I'm at, during the pandemic, a lot of us were struggling. I was doing an abbreviated master's degree, just focused actually on finance at USC during the period, and graduated right into the pandemic. And I'd had a finance job at an entertainment firm in Century City. And unfortunately, my boss called me. His deal flow had really suffered, and he got acquired and bought out. And, he no longer had really control of his firm. And so I no longer had a job. And that was July 1st of 2020. It was a very scary time for everybody. And, I'm here living in LA in an apartment at the time. And I'm like, how am I going to pay my bills? And so I called my boss in the Marines and was like, hey, Joe, I just lost my job this morning. Company I'm out of business. Can I do more work with the office? And I was at the Hollywood entertainment office. And I had all this business training, but it was like something I was always naturally good at was writing. That was just something writing. And I'd like to think I was good as an actor. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But, growing up, it was something I felt good at and I've been gifted with being able to mimic people. And whether it's famous people on television or cartoons or movie actors, bosses in the Marine Corps, get yourself in trouble with that. But so something I went back to was like, hey, Joe, can I work at the office? He's like, what would you want to do? And I'd done a couple of interviews already, just off the cuff. And he was, I thought, how about I interview successful Marines in Hollywood? And he was like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. It'll help with recruiting. It'll help with people getting, knowing about the office and what we do. And go ahead, get me a list, send it over to me. I'll approve it and get it back to you. Just went forward. Yeah. And around the same time, I'd been hired by We Are the Mighty to write as well, because they were like, yeah, we like your couple of interviews we've seen. Those are cool. Can you do them for us? Maybe for the Army and the Air Force and the Navy and the Coast Guard and whoever. Oh, sure. And I went to work, and I paid my bills by getting to interview Robert Duvall.
Oh.
That guy was
cool.
really nice. Yeah, it was really cool. I interviewed Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son. He was a veteran in the Coast Guard. Got to learn all about Jimmy Stewart and all these old Hollywood legends. And then, on the Marine side, it was ridiculous the amount. I was very blessed with the amount of interviews I got. It was Don Belisario, who created NCIS and JAG and Magnum PI. He was a Marine back in the 50s. I interviewed him. He's super kind to me, very professional. Bill Broyles, who wrote Castaway and Apollo 13 and a lot of other great films. The Polar Express, too. Bill was a Vietnam vet, decorated. And it led to me interviewing Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx, who finances film. Yeah, I cold emailed him and he emailed me back. I couldn't believe it was him. I looked at the email 2 or 3 times. It was like, I think that really is him. I explained who I was and what I was doing. And he, got back to me and said things were busy, but follow up with him in 6 months. I did. Followed up with him in 6 months again. And so I got a chance to interview him, which he rarely does. And he was, again, extremely generous and kind to me. Learned a lot from him and his impact on the Marines. And then also the films that he finances are usually, inspirational. The Blind Side is one he financed. The Sicario movies, Good Guys versus Bad Guys, 12 Strong, The First Green Beret, OD. You're familiar with some of the stuff that he's put his money behind, which is Only the Brave is another one that he financed that's really good with Josh Brolin and Miles Teller about the firefighters.
Yes. I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with the film. That's cool. And so then does that bring you now to the present, or is there something else that you've done since then?
There's a couple more, just brief things.
Yeah, of course.
And I know you let me kind of run my mouth here, and
I like it.
I appreciate that. Thanks. And through all those interviews, I was able to interview Peter Cullen, who's the voice of Optimus Prime, who based the voice of Optimus on his brother, who was a decorated Marine Vietnam vet. And Peter tells the story far better than me, but it was his brother that asked him what he was doing one morning. He said, I'm going to audition for this robot leader. Peter, if you do that, make him strong enough to be gentle. Don't make him yelling and screaming like some Hollywood. Make him a real leader, which is what Peter did. So Peter's become a friend of mine and a mentor, and so many others have too. And I get to share, messages on Facebook with certain people I interviewed with and catch up with them and stuff. And it's neat. And through all that, I felt called to go back to do acting, which when you say that to people, they're like, what? You don't want to earn money? You want to live behind a shed? And people do earn livings acting. And something I hadn't done in years. And so I got back into it, and my coach his name's Gale. And he studied with Sanford Meisner in New York in the 80s. And Sandy Meisner trained Tom Cruise, Robert Duvall, Marlon Brando. I mean, it's a huge, huge list.
A list of small, no-name actors. I get it.
I mean, they've been on some soap operas and
You may have seen one or two.
Yeah, you may have. If you're watching enough TV, you might see one of them as they just bring in the drink and have one line and then they leave.
Okay,
that's all it is. And so with Gale, he'd been in another small film called Dead Poets Society with some, also just really small name actors.
Small name.
I mean, yeah, it won an Oscar, but I think it was an accident, like a misprint or something. There's no way.
No way.
There's no way. It's just. I haven't watched the movie. I'm like, what is this about? What is this, a space movie? So studied with Gale for a while. We were doing Zoom. We've done some in person. And so I put myself back out there as an actor. I had a manager pick me up very serendipitously through a friend and a collaborator. And she's like, I referee for military roles. And so she's got me auditions for the Terminal List and big commercial auditions and things that are, it's great to even get a shot at the plate because most people never even get the chance to swing at that.
That's awesome.
And, she's given me good advice. And so I've paid my bills with acting.
That's awesome.
Paying bills with writing and acting. I mean, it's a roller coaster. And last year, they were on strike with writing and acting, but it was definitely serendipitous. I've very, very much been blessed, and I've had some great opportunities come my way, and some indie projects, indie television, and I've had legit speaking roles, and I've had significant parts, so I can't complain. But it's definitely been a journey. I never would have thought I'd be on this path, Still enjoy doing the Marines, host my podcast and interviewing, usually veterans or people directing veteran films. And I had some great people on. And it's really just been last week I got to interview Barry Corbin, on Yellowstone. He was on Northern Exposure. He was a Marine back in the early 60s. Usually he was in No Country for Old Men. You'd know him if you saw him. And he usually plays a cowboy. He's worked with a lot of big name people. And so getting to even talk with him, it's a revelation. Every single time I get to do this, it's a revelation and an opportunity, a chance. And I'm just very blessed because that's what showed up. That was the life raft that showed up in a worldwide pandemic, and it's I'm still riding it, and it's a boat now, and it's got a motor to it, and it's got a direction. I really You say what advice do I have for people getting into the industry? I went into the business store and was like, initially as a creator, went to the business store and I learned stuff, but if there was going to be a veteran going into it, and if you were going to try to make way in the industry, it would, pick up journalism, find a way to write journalism articles, interview people. I know that's some self-starter stuff that you don't always get paid to do. And I didn't get paid for my first few interviews anyways. It was once they got published, people saw, there's that. There's, if you have your GI Bill, you have to be careful where you go because, it can be expensive. But you'd want to have a direction once you'd go someplace, whether you got an MFA in screenwriting or you got an MFA in producing. But you also want to recognize what the school's connected to, who they're connected to. And even though they are connected to those people, it doesn't mean you're going to go get a job with them right away. That's just, if you look at most people in the industry, I'd say majority of them, they all started out kind of doing their own stuff, self-generating, creating their own ideas, going out and shooting short films or features if they could afford it or could find a way to afford it. It's really thinking outside the box. It's using your creativity to find a way to succeed, because going through the front door, unless you're a James Cameron, Jennifer Lopez, Nicole Kidman, the gate will likely lower for you. For most others of us, no. The moat's there full of sharks and the gate staying up, and you've got to find a way through the back door, the side window, the chimney, or the sewer, which preferably not the sewer, preferably not the underground. But then that's kind of how you have to get in. It's like you're breaking into Shawshank Redemption.
That makes so much sense. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for the rundown on your history and for ending that with some advice. I've got a bunch of questions that I want to dive into based off of that. And I want to start at the beginning when you were in the Marine Corps. So you knew you had this passion for writing and acting. You had already had success in that space. And so while you were active duty, how would you recommend somebody balance service, leading, being an excellent member of the military, but then also building up their skill set to make that transition into entertainment? Because I wouldn't say, if you're a good writer, that certainly will benefit your military career. So there is some overlap, but the two are, I would say, pretty opposed depending on what you're doing. So how did you maintain kind of developing both, and how would you recommend others do it?
That's a good question. I mean, my maintenance for it's like watching films and television and those things and making notes of what I like and what I didn't. And, taking deep dives into classics, taking deep dives into, some of the new current classics, that's the right even term for it. I think, if I were to go back and do it again, I would find a writing workshop. You can do stuff online now that really didn't exist back in the early 2010s as much as it does now. And you can take classes on Zoom at UCLA. You can take classes on Zoom with, TV writers. There's a thing called the Writers Guild Foundation Veteran Writing Workshop. I had applied for that and got into it and did it from 2022 to 2023. Learned a lot, wrote a pilot. I highly recommend veterans check that out because you can do it in the evenings. I wanted to say it's twice a month when it first starts out, and then it's once a month in the evenings. But you have to write in between. You have to break stuff down and restart it and break it again. You have to really learn the writing process. I mean, if you look at Hemingway and some of the other great writers, and even one of the screenwriters who came in and talked to us, Billy Ray, I write 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And yeah, he makes, a couple $1 million a year or more, off of it. He's not a joke. He's one of the best. But you have to really work at it. You can't just do it once in a while. And, I'm going to start writing again this year myself with some mentorship and a one-on-one with an experienced development exec and writer to go through and write Antioch into being a feature and also a short. So it'll go from stage to film. So I'd say write as much as you can, find time to write, block out time. And there's a great little book called the 15-second, it's 15-second program, 15-second manager. You can find 15 seconds a day to write. You can find 15 seconds a day to act. And so it is left brain, right brain activities. Nonetheless, on the weekends, you can decompress and you can do some right brain, more creative stuff. I would suggest going to museums. I would suggest building your mind with things that aren't always associated with the military. And I'm not saying you do Men Who Stare at Goats type of stuff where it's super far out there, if you know the film and the book, and you're trying to do telepathy. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but you might get in trouble. But I think that it's important to find other creatives to shoot short films with, even if they're terrible. You should try to find in your free time to do that. And I know there's video games and there's movies and there's going out to the beach and party with your friends and stuff. You can do all those things, but you should try to limit what you're going to spend your creative free time on. It's healthy to take vacations. You take one every 3 or 4 months. I don't do that enough. It's just a grind to what I'm doing. But it is very important to do that and to find that free time when you can. And even if you're on deployment, okay, you just got off shift, you can go to sleep. You can get up and write for 15 minutes. You can write a scene, at least your first draft of a scene for a TV show or a pilot. Maybe at least a page or two, I would think. And then you can go back and redo it again. I mean, you're going to have to think about it beforehand. But it's, you can take little increments of time throughout your day and do that. And I do that. That's how I get things done. Most mornings I'm up early, sending emails and doing stuff before my day gets really started. Then I work out. And this is another thing just to keep in mind. It's important to keep a high level of physical fitness, but also if you're doing so much physical fitness, you're going to burn out all that creative energy you have. So you have to find a balance for that. And that's tough in the Marine Corps. It's a very challenging physical environment. You also need to be able to think. And I tried my best to balance it. So I'm not like, full 100% free time working out. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go try to write. Oh, my brain's tired. I'm going to need to sleep. I need to get some food and then just sit here and veg because I can't move. You have to have a balance. And sometimes I struggle with it. I know other people do too. So those would be my suggestions. Continue to hone your creative aspect, understand, and look at art, look at film, look at drawings. I just did a drawing on the right side of the brain course recently, DRSB, and that was worth checking out. They do it online now. The woman who created it's still alive. She's almost 100, but she started it back in the 70s, I think at Cal State Long Beach. And it was just engineers took the course. People who already could draw took the course. I took the course, not really being good at drawing whatsoever, and got a lot better. And it was able to look at things differently. Look at the negative space of what creates a shape. The negative space, the shadow, as opposed to the shape itself. Look at what the negative space is to the left or right of it, or below or above it. And then one more thought. When you do take a vacation, take it to somewhere new or different. I've traveled and been able to use Expedia and points on Southwest and, do it on the minimal budget because it's not like I'm rolling dough one day, maybe, and try out new places, try out, Yosemite, go to a national park, you should see New York City, you should see Chicago and check out the museums there as well. But, if you can take a vacation to the Caribbean, and probably one of the cheaper ones is to Key West. You know, there's, and this is, speaking from experience, you can get cheap flights in and out of there. You can fly in cheaply to Fort Lauderdale, and you can drive down, and you get to see the Caribbean at least as best you can from Florida. So it's just expand your horizons as best you can with the time you have, and fill your mind with big things and creative things. And lo and behold, it should help start your creative motor, because you need to build from that. One book recommendation would be to Think and Grow Rich by Nathaniel Hill. If no one's ever heard of it. It is a good book, and it touches on the creative imagination and what Edison and so many others of their time, Alexander Graham Bell and Woolworth. I can't go shop at a Woolworth anymore, but I did when I was a kid. They still exist. F.W. Woolworth. So all these creative minds and business minds, they still had creative, inventive minds. That's something to kind of build and hone throughout life. So I know that was a good long answer, but I wanted to at least be thorough and try to help other people, because some of these things I discovered myself was like, would have been good to know that,
No, and that's the point of this podcast. So I appreciate you sharing all of that advice. The next thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you when you were preparing for your transition out of the Marine Corps, what advice would you give to people for planning that? You've given a lot of advice for how to prepare to write, but
right?
what do you think you did well in that transition? What do you think you could have done better?
Oh, I could have done a lot of stuff better. I guess that's kind of being a Marine, kind of looking at things in a perfectionist attitude. It's not always healthy. I think it's taking time and being gentle with yourself and not being hard on yourself. And when you make mistakes, not be like, nobody died from it. And that's a lot of times that's what training, especially the Marines, especially parts of the Army and all branches, especially the SEALs and the fighter pilots and some of the real tough things, and even basic boot camp. It's kind of like, don't screw up because it could get somebody killed. Don't do something yourself, because if you're selfish, you can get somebody killed. And so that's kind of like, you make the mistake in the civilian world and you're like, damn,
I just got someone killed.
Yeah, there's nobody killed. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's not that burden and it's hard to understand that, because we're trained so well and the military's done it for a long time. And I've had psychologists come in and tweak it to where it even gets more ingrained, which saves people's lives, but it doesn't always make it easy to step out. Even if you go to the fire or the police or the FBI or something, you're still going to have to transition. It's not the same environment. It's not. And I think the best thing is to take time for yourself, set up some decompressed time. You're not, do your best to have some money set aside to where you can kind of relax or vacation, or start that kind of change in your mind to where it adjusts and you start to perceive things in a civilian manner. And if you want to stay in the reserves, that's a great way to keep that kind of camaraderie, to keep that kind of, some of the benefits going that are nice. But it's important to take time off. It's important to spend it either with family, with people around you, or even by yourself, to go out and just enjoy nature and take a breath and realize that it's over for now. And, you may want to talk to a counselor. You may want to find a support group. Make sure you have your medical stuff in line when you get out, so you go to the VA and take care of that and have things documented. That helps a lot. Make sure you journal. I think journaling is healthy. I journal a lot, and you can go back and look and see where you're at that day or that month. And you can reflect on it, and maybe you say, okay, I felt this way before. Oh, this is what I did to kind of get out of that rut. Because it's easy to fall into a rut once you transition, because you're not formation, work, chow, PT, or however those go in your day, and there's going to be some structure that drops out. Those are important points.
I agree. I love that you said take time to decompress. I did not do that, and I certainly regret it. I think honestly, part of the reason I'm so excited for my daughter to be born is I'm very excited for her to be there, but this is going to be the first time I'm going to have an extended period of time of not working even after I got out of the military, because I literally started working on my terminal leave. I got my job while I was on terminal, and that, looking back on it, that was a dumb move. I shouldn't have done that. And so I assume that you did the same, like you just got right into it after you got out of the active duty?
Yeah, I did. I had a little bit of a break, which was me moving from Florida, where I was stationed at, to LA, which that's really not a break, moving cross country.
No.
I drove cross country, which was neat because I got to see parts of the country I'd never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I met up with the Marine veteran on set who he took me on to, I can't remember what that was even called, the Manhattan Project. It was like an AMC series about the building of the bombs. I got to
Oh, cool.
be on there. It was a neat, cross country trip. Stayed with some family
Hmm.
in Arizona, and then made it out to LA. But it was like, bam, business school starts. Bam, internship starts. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out life, and I'm like, yeah, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And that's where it's kind of like you don't. I think it's normal to misjudge some social situations. It's normal to look at things and be like, oh, okay, this is how it used to work. It's not working that way now. Uh-oh.
No.
Exactly. And so I had a very similar experience where it was like, there was a little gap of breath, but that gap involved work. And it was right back to work.
Grind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you're now operating in a context that's entirely different from what you were used to in the Marines as a combat veteran. And so, especially for you, I feel like getting out and starting to work at Lockheed Martin is very different than getting out and going to business school in Los Angeles and getting to the entertainment industry. And so you said something, I'm going to combine two questions here, but you said
Yeah.
something really interesting that I picked up on, which was like combat veteran Marine officer working in a mailroom after you got out of business school, after these internships. And so what was it like for you, being a veteran that started working in Hollywood? Because I feel like for people who don't work in that industry, there's a perception of what that's like. And it's certainly different than what the perception of the military is like. I can't speak to the reality of that. And so I would like you to. And then additionally, as someone was in combat, had lost friends, and is now immersed in this very different culture where you have to basically reset and build yourself back up. What was that? What was it like being in the culture, and what was it like basically starting back from the bottom as someone who's had more life experience than a lot of the people that you're around?
It's a great question, and that's an in-depth one for sure. Um, the entertainment industry is a business. I think the biggest misperception from people is they think, oh, it's happy time, it's free time. I don't know if they don't look at the stocks of Disney or Warner Brothers or HBO. I don't know if they don't look at that and don't realize, oh, they're making stuff and they're selling and making money through advertising and people wanting to watch it and paying subscription fees and going to theme parks. I don't understand. Even in Walt Disney's day, it was still kind of obvious you were charged admission to go into Disneyland. You were still kind of charged admission to watch one of the animated features of Disney. And any of them, Warner, Paramount. And so I think the biggest misperception is it's not a business. It's playtime. Or, and yeah, there's favorites in the industry. Politics is there isn't any job anywhere and any time. Even the military has politics. There's legacy people. There's people who've been in the industry, just like there are in the military. There's been families that have, general upon colonel upon sergeant major. It's ongoing. And there's that in this business as well. And there is, a lot of times people try to, and this isn't as much in the military. I don't know about some of the other corporate sectors, but I would doubt in Wall Street. They try to get you to work for free. And if I'm working for free in the industry, I'm working for me. And sometimes I've done projects on spec because I believe in them, and we'll see where that goes. But more often than not, it's like you're either paying me or you're not. And as a veteran, it's easy to come in and have people kind of like buffalo you. Oh, yeah. Well, you do this and you can make $1 million. And I hate any fault for those. I'm like, okay, it seems like it's a, snake oil salesman. And so you run into that. And again, I don't know if that from even an anthropological or historical point is kind of California, from back in the gold rush. Oh, you make $1 million. Go out there and pan for gold. You're out there for like years and don't find any. And then you're like destitute. That's like 1850s or something. But, the entertainment industry, you want to work to get paid. And you have to recognize people outside the industry don't understand a lot of what you're dealing with. It's still a business. It's still people, but it has its nuances that are very, very specific for the industry. And you have to pay attention to what people aren't saying. In the military, it's much more straightforward. Great job. That's terrible. Entertainment, you might get, this was good and that was good, but they're not touching on like the elephant in the room, something that might have screwed up for. And you're like, okay, they're not talking about that. That must have been a problem. What do you think about that? If you ask the question, usually sometimes you get like you can get a abrasive answer, or you can get no answer. It's just a much softer, much more under the water type of, you have to see the iceberg. You're like, okay, so they mentioned that. There must be a lot more that must have been. And so that's something. I mean, there's been some famous people in the industry that you always listen to what they're not saying. Okay, they're not talking about that. All right. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. I'll plan for that ahead, or I'll bring that up maybe to them in a meeting down the road and let them know some good things have happened, or I'm taking it for action. It's a much more, there's an ebb and flow to it. For the military, I mean, you can be hammering away and I want to be a sergeant. I want to be a captain. And you're just working your butt off as a corporal or a lieutenant. And it's great. Now in Hollywood, if you do that let's say you try that as an actor, or let's say you try that as some of the other creatives, if you're that hardcore and pushing, that can turn people off. They can be like, oh, this person is desperate, even though it could technically be your work ethic. Maybe you're doing fine financially. You're just trying to crest the next wave. And so in entertainment, it's you have to have a social life more than, say, in the military. Military, you can kind of be like, I'm just working 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. You can do that in entertainment, but you also need to have a social life and be able to talk about, I've went out and visited these places, or me and my friends are going bowling this weekend. And you have to kind of talk about that. It's a nuance that you still do in the military, but it really is important in entertainment. And it's much more of a social environment. Yeah, you have drinks with the colonel, drinks with your sergeants, or, if you're, a staff sergeant, you have drinks with some of the higher staff NCOs. But there's just more of that. And that's some of the stuff that I didn't realize. My work ethic was great. That's probably why I had such, legit internships and people spent time with me. I've been mentored by some of the best, but there's things that you have to think outside the box on. And you have to recognize some people won't respect the industry. Oh, it's playtime. Tell that to Steven Spielberg. It is playtime, but it also is work. Tell that to George Lucas, who made an industry off of not only science fiction movies, but also science fiction toys. So it was playtime, but George did very, very well and was very wise. Could see stuff, and you just have to be respectful of all people. I must say you're not that way in the military. I was. But some people get out and they think, I was a hard ass. I was a Ranger or a Marine or Green Beret, and I'll just blow right through stuff. And so you don't want to try to blow. You can do that in the military. Okay, that guy's got it. He's aggressive. She'll take care of it. She'll whoop ass. If you do that, you can, the personalities in this business are just different. They're still type A, but they're different. And you have to be respectful of that. You have to be, let's say, professional. You just have to know who you're dealing with, or at least rely on a gut sense of, I think this is the best way to handle it. And that doesn't always come from training in the military. Again, those are just some of the things that I've learned, either through mentorship, watching other people fail, or having my own mistakes where I'm like, yep, that wasn't the right way to handle that. Let's try it a different way. I'm going to talk to some friends about that to get some feedback on how to be better the next time. And so it's continual improvement like the military, but you have to do it on your own.
And how, when you're working through those mistakes that you made, but how do you do that while also overcoming that sense of, if I mess up, people die? Like, how did you work on both at the same time?
Well, that really took time, and one, I was recognizing it, but two,
Mm-hmm.
it was really just taking time. It's probably about 2 years out, maybe 2.5, where I really started like, oh. And then, even now that it's been a lot longer out, I can see it, but it's not as, knock on wood here, it's not as like a shock, or, oh man, I screwed up, I'm gonna beat myself up for a while, or man, I could, it's much different than it was when I first got out. And when I'm back around the Marines and the reserves, that comes back, and I'm like, okay, you can kind of, shift back into that perception or perspective. And then once I get away, it takes a day or 2 or 3, and then I'm kind of back to the civilian side, which is, how a lot of people operate in general. But it really is this time. I wish there was a better answer. I wish there was some pill they could take. You wake up from the Matrix, but
and you're like, I'm cured. Yeah. I think, but I do think that there is a magic pill, and the magic pill is understanding that it takes time. Because once you understand that, I mean, I know that seems like a wishy-washy answer, but once you understand that once you really accept that you're not going to be better, you will be better eventually, but it takes time. You can give yourself a lot more grace and forgiveness, which is what you've already said. But I think that people who think, oh, it's going to be someday I'm going to flip this light switch, and I wasn't good one day and I am good the next, like, that expectation is what kills you, because you're just like, why haven't I improved yet? Why am I not better yet? Why haven't I had this like massive transformation, when it's a lot of really small transformations over a long period of time?
It's getting better every day, not getting better in one day. I mean, that's expecting miraculous Superman, superhuman, gonna leap a tall building in a single bound. Really, it's kind of like you're climbing it, and you keep going. Like there's no better way, and patience is key. I got out and was very used to, hey, we're going to get this done. Bam, bam, bam. It moves along that quick. That only happens for people, let's say, in the entertainment industries, unless you're Tom Cruise, a Spielberg, a Lopez, a Kidman, Margot Robbie, somebody like that. Those are the folks where it's like you can get stuff going like that. Everybody, I mean, Tarantino, it still takes Tarantino 3 years or 2 years or something to get something made. It usually takes 7 years to get a film made in Hollywood. 7. Now, vastly different than 1930s and 40s Hollywood, where directors were at a studio. The studio head was casting the film. We're going to get this made. We're going to make 10 movies a year with this one director. Now that director gets a chance to direct once every 3 or 5 or 7 years, unless they're doing shorts or something. But it is, patience is key. And I had to really develop patience and really kind of step back. And I've had to learn, okay, I'm not just going to do it 3 times. I'm going to try it 6 times. I'm going to try it 8 times or 9 times to see if I can get it right once. Whereas in the Marines, I'll try it 1, 2, or 3 times and I'm moving on, or maybe I'll give it 4 or 5 times, but it's just, that's my Marine voice. I sound like I got a Southern sense now, but that's just something to remember is it's sometimes you got to do something 10 times, and I know it's going to suck. I don't have a better answer for you. Or maybe you're bright enough to where you can do it 3 or 4 times at once. But those are, again, rare people, rare intellects.
Yes.
Rare emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. It's the forgiveness and being willing to persist is so incredibly important. So you've had a really amazing opportunity to talk to some incredible veteran talents in the industry that you work in. And what are some interesting stories or some really powerful nuggets of wisdom that you've been able to get from those interactions that stand out to you? I'm sure you could write a book on it if you wanted to, but what comes to mind right now?
That's a great question. There's been so many too, so many little notes. Probably that one of the best, and this was kind of on the undercurrent of just about every veteran interview I've dealt with. But I think the best one comes from Ron Meyer, who's a Marine. He was one of the founders of CAA. Used to represent Sly Stallone and Meryl Streep, I believe Tom Cruise and so many others. And he was the head of Universal and then vice chairman of Universal, NBC Universal. But he went to the Marines. He got in trouble with the law. He was actually one of my first interviews. He got in trouble with the law and was given either jail or the Marine Corps. And with his old school agent way of saying, I thought I was a tough guy. I learned some lessons in the Marine Corps. But he says back when back when you could put their hands on, they could put their hands on you could put their hands on them. So it was, fisticuffs. It was it was very, very brutal. And you were dealing with World War II and Korean vets who were in the service back then in the early 60s. Some of those guys that were around. And he said, he learned a lot of lessons, but it seemed like the lesson he gained from all that in life was treat other people the way you want to be treated. Follow the golden rule and tell people the best truth you can, He said that before, and that's resonated with me, and that's kind of even shifted some of my concept of thinking of, am I doing this the right way, or am I treating this person the way I want to be treated? You get made a chump once. His advice, you can get made a chump once, and then that's it. And that's how I treat folks. I give people the benefit of the doubt until that last moment where it's like, this just ain't working out. I've been patient with you, probably more patient than others, and it's time to move on. And people have been patient with me at times that way too. Yeah, it's the golden rule. I'd say treat people the way you want to be treated. And, if they walk away from it and it still doesn't work out, at least they can say, the guy was a veteran, he'd seen stuff, but, he at least treated me well. I can't say that he was a jerk. He wasn't, and sometimes the situation may call for it if somebody else is being a jerk and you have to stand up to him and, be an adult and being a professional, but I think a humble attitude goes a long way with people, and it catches people off guard in today's society because they're like, this person isn't caught up in their social media. I've got 10,000 followers. I'm better than you. I'm a star. Really? Okay. And that's what's important. And it seems like life goes a lot better when you have, there's all boats lift with the rising tide. I know these are kind of positive. These are inspirational and idealistic thoughts, but I think it's important to do that in life and to have those idealistic thoughts. But yeah, it's just, it's important to remain humble as well. I'd say those are probably the top level. The top level for people is if you're going to be successful in life, remain humble. Those are, I know those kind of run together of ideas, but
no,
they overlap.
I mean, they become iconic ideas because they matter. They've persisted this long for a reason, and so there's probably something there. What was it like talking to John Belisario with a dude? I don't know if NCIS is the longest running show, but it's got to be, for at least live action, it's got to be close. Like, I know you have The Simpsons and like Family Guy and South Park on the animated side, but like on live action, I don't know if there's a longer running show.
I don't think so. I think it's beaten Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke was on from 55 to 75, and if I remember, quick Google here, I think NCIS was from 2000 to, let's see, NCIS show. So it started in 2003. So it looks like, 21 years is what it's on now. 2004, 22 years. I'll do our Wikipedia friendly search. No, it looks like number of seasons is 20. Officially, it should be on 21 now. I do believe that will be Gunsmoke because I can't think of anything else. So yeah, and it has so many spinoffs, and it has so much longevity. People still enjoy watching it, and it's just procedural. Bad guys getting caught by good guys.
Yep.
And Don did that with Magnum. He did that with Airwolf. He did that with even with Quantum Leap, Joel Way. He did that with Jag. I mean, the guy's a genius when it comes to that. And he started out life as an advertising exec. He didn't come into Hollywood until after he was 40.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he was, and it was something from the Nathaniel Hill book. It talks about, the best inventors, and a lot of the entrepreneurs, at least featured in that book, they really hit their stride in their from 40 to 50 or 40 to 60, which I'm like,
oh yeah,
everyone's, let's try that,
Yeah. I mean, people think, I feel like social media has like aggrandized like the 20-year-old entrepreneur who like wrote Facebook and then becomes a billionaire. But even in the non-Hollywood world, almost like the average age of your successful like startup founder is in their 40s, because you just have more life experience. Like you've been in an industry, or you've just been around the block enough to actually see problems, and then you actually can lead people to your vision. Like you have what you need right around that age to actually succeed, versus in your 20s, you just get ludicrously lucky, you draw your lottery ticket. But social media, I believe, makes it look like, oh, everyone should be trying to, like, you need to be getting your first 100 million by your 30s. And I think that's a tough thing for people to see, especially veterans getting out now who are like, oh, this is the goal. These are the goalposts. And we're like those get to the goalpost kind of people. And I think a lot of people come out of the military misinformed on what success really should look like. So.
Oh, absolutely. It's The Strangest Secret Ever by, check this. This actually came to an acting class. Strangest Secret Ever. Earl Nightingale. And it's something to check out.
Okay.
Was it Bob Proctor is another one. And they kind of fall in line with Nathaniel Hill stuff, but Nightingale's comments, it's like a 30-minute video on YouTube, and it's got a bunch of views. And it's pretty spot on with what he's got to say. I agree with him. In Nightingale's video, he talks about, he's written stuff too, he's long since passed. A man is successful, or a person is successful in life if they are working towards a goal, they're putting their effort in, and they're finding results. I know this, I'm putting in all kind of effort. I should be making $100 million right now. I have to use it in my acting and writing. I'm getting paid to write articles, I'm paid to interview people, I'm getting paid to learn, really. Okay, is that successful? Yeah. Is it something I am passionate about? Yeah. I've gotten paid to act. In LA, of all places, I've gotten paid, sometimes up to $100 an hour, which I'm like, I don't even make that. Yeah. And there's people who make far more than that. It's just in acting, on TV, and features, and even, different mini series. There's folks who they could make $5,000 a day. So think about that. But those folks have been doing it for a long time too. When you look, it's like they've been working at the acting craft for 8 or 10 years, or 40 or 50 years. Like Denzel, you think about this. To my knowledge, Denzel Washington started acting in like the early 70s, if not earlier. He was high school, college stuff. He got an MFA. He didn't hit television, or at least Broadway, to my knowledge, until the early 80s. 10 years. Now think about that to Training Day. 20 years from when he finally got onto TV. 30 years from when he started. I mean, that comes right off screen. Hey, he's real. 100%, like, you can see that guy walking down the street, and that's what you're like, whoa. Think about that. When people are, overnight success, that happened once in a great while, Jennifer Lawrence or some of those folks. But it's like Jack Nicholson worked and did indie films and television for 8 years, 10 years, until he kind of hit it off with Easy Rider. And then was it The Last Detail, which you should check out, a movie about Nicholson plays a chief petty officer escorting a sailor, to jail. And it's a really good film and a good book. And that was before Chinatown, which Nicholson really took off then in 73 or 74. So he'd been doing it for well over a decade. He'd been taking classes, and he'd worked as a fire marshal. He did the Air National Guard here. It's like some of the people that are like legendary, and Denzel definitely comes to mind. And you think Nicole Kidman, she's been acting for 40 or 50 years. Jennifer Lopez has been around for 40 plus. I mean, she's been around a long time doing dancing and, singing and those things. Those people didn't get good overnight. They trained a lot. And to think if you're going to get out of the service and making $100 million as an entrepreneur, that's not realistic. That's self-defeating. And that's not really gauging any of your success. And that's something that the Earl Nightingale shared about. And I listened to that and it touched it, continued me on my path and being like, this is true. You have an imagination, you have a will, use it, but if you expect overnight success, you will be usually 99% of the time severely disappointed.
I completely agree with you. And I think that that's excellent advice to end this episode on, because it's so very important. But Joel, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really, really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to help educate people, tell your story. It's so interesting. I could talk to you for a very long time about movies and everything else.
Sure.
But I appreciate this hour of your time that you've given us. Before we go, if people want to find you, what should they be looking for?
Thank you for having me, Billy, and thanks for being flexible and working through things here this morning. I really appreciate that, and you giving me the opportunity to share my experiences to hopefully inspire others. It does mean a lot. If you want to find me, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram at Joel Searles, JoelSearls. See my picture, look just like this here on the podcast. YouTube, you can find Samurai Pulse, Joel Searles. You can find that on YouTube. Facebook, same thing, just my first name. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to read any of my articles, they're on Linktree, they're on Medium. They're, quick Google search and you'll find them. And, happy to answer questions for those other people out there looking to succeed and, provide mentorship as best I can. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. I've got a little more time if you have any safe rounds.
No, I think we got all the big rocks out of the way. So I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been really awesome. Thank you so much. And for everyone out there listening who've made it to the end of the episode, thank you so much for being here. You all are the reason why we do this, why we take the time to share this advice. You're all wonderful people. And if you like this episode and you want to support us, liking, sharing, subscribing is always very much appreciated. But that's it. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Post Military Podcast. Peace.